The vast chamber of the Galactic Council stretched nearly half a kilometer across, with curved walls rising hundreds of meters to a domed ceiling that displayed a real-time hologram of the galaxy itself. 5,000 representatives from across known space occupied tiered platforms that circled the central floor. Some delegates resembled humans, but most were utterly alien. Crystalline beings that pulsed with inner light, floating gas clouds contained in gravity fields, tentacled creatures suspended in liquid tanks, and species too strange to easily describe. At the very center of this imposing space stood a single human. Ambassador Jack Harrison fought to keep his expression neutral as the Grand Arbiter of the Council. A 12-foot-tall being with iridescent scales and forearms raised its upper limbs for silence. The chamber, which had been filled with the cacophony of 2,000 different species communicating in their native tongues, fell immediately quiet. Species designation, human. Planet of origin, Earth. Sol system. The Grand Arbiter's voice boomed through the chamber without any visible amplification technology. You stand before the Galactic Council accused of crimes against the stability of the unified territories. Jack straightened his shoulders. He represented not just Earth's government but all of humanity. Billions of lives who had no idea their fate was being decided in this moment. The evidence will show, continued the Arbiter, that within just 30 standard cycles of joining the galactic community, humans have violated 57 provisions of the Harmony Accords. Holographic displays materialized around the chamber, showing various human activities throughout Council space. Scientific expeditions, trade missions, cultural exchanges, each labeled with an alleged violation. Most concerning, the Arbiter's voice dropped to a dangerous rumble, is the human delegation's unauthorized access to the ancient archives on Proxima Centauri 4 and the subsequent spread of restricted information to multiple species in the Outer Rim territories. A murmur swept through the assembled representatives. Jack noticed some delegates changing colors in what he'd learned was an expression of alarm. The penalty for such actions, the Arbiter declared, is typically the quarantine of the offending species to their home system for no less than 500 cycles. 500 years trapped in the solar system. Earth's government had prepared for this possibility, but it would devastate their growing interstellar economy. Ambassador Harrison, the Arbiter's 4 eyes fixed on him. How does humanity respond to these charges? Jack took a deep breath. Everything depended on the next few minutes, honored Arbiter. Distinguished council members, he began, his voice calm and measured. Humanity acknowledges accessing the Proxima archives. Another wave of murmurs swept the chamber, surprise at the open admission. However, Jack continued, we did so only after discovering that critical information was being systematically withheld from newly admitted species. Information vital to the survival of not just humanity, but all life in the galaxy. Explain yourself, demanded a representative of the Vorn Directorate, one of the Council's founding species. Jack nodded to his assistant at the edge of the chamber. The young woman activated a small device and suddenly the galaxy display above them changed. A dark mass appeared at the edge of the Milky Way, spreading like ink through water, consuming everything in its path. This entity, Jack said, pointing upward, has been designated the Cosmic Devourer in Council records. According to the data we accessed, it has consumed 14 civilizations in the last millennium alone. The Council erupted in chaos. Many representatives had never seen this information. This is classified data, shouted the Vorn representative. Security protocols have been breached. The Arbiter slammed a ceremonial staff against the floor, instantly silencing the chamber. Ambassador Harrison, the Arbiter said with dangerous calm, you have just committed an even greater violation by sharing restricted information with the General Council. With respect, Arbiter, Jack replied, withholding information about an extinction-level threat isn't security. It's negligence at best, and conspiracy at worst. He stepped forward, something no one ever did in Council proceedings. Our analysts discovered something the High Council has known for centuries. This entity will reach populated Council space within 20 years. Yet there is no galaxy-wide preparation, no evacuation plans for threatened systems, no unified defense strategy. These matters are handled by the Strategic Committee. The Arbiter responded coldly. The full Council need not be troubled with their own survival? Jack interrupted, causing gasps throughout the chamber. We found the Strategic Committee's actual plan. When the entity approaches, Outlying systems, primarily those populated by newer council members, will be quietly sacrificed to slow its advance, giving the core worlds time to fortify. The chamber exploded again, representatives of younger species demanding answers while elder races called for order. Enough, the Arbiter roared, and the sound reverberated physically through the chamber. When silence fell again, the ancient being leaned forward. You have exceeded your authority, human. This matter will be addressed, but not here, not now. It must be addressed now, Jack insisted, because humanity has discovered something else, something the council either missed or deliberately ignored. He nodded again to his assistant, who adjusted the display. The image zoomed in on the cosmic devourer, revealing complex patterns within what had appeared to be chaos. This isn't a mindless, destructive force, Jack explained. It's intelligent and it's trying to communicate. Preposterous, scoffed a representative from the Mariki Federation. Is it? Jack replied. Humanity has only been studying this data for 6 months, but we've already identified recurring patterns consistent with attempts at communication. The entity doesn't destroy worlds, it processes them. It's trying to interface with other consciousnesses, but its method is incompatible with our forms of existence. And how would you know this? Demanded the Vorn representative. Because, Jack said quietly, we've established preliminary contact. The silence that followed was absolute. Impossible, the Arbiter finally said. The greatest minds of the Council have studied this phenomenon for millennia. Yes, Jack agreed, but none of those minds were human. Our brains process information differently than any other known species. We've discovered that human consciousness creates quantum resonance patterns remarkably similar to those of the entity. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, optical sensors, and other sensory organs of dozens of representatives. That's what this is really about, isn't it? You didn't quarantine previous species for accessing the archives. You're afraid of us, not because we're violent or technologically advanced, but because there's something in human consciousness that you don't understand. The Arbiter exchanged glances with the inner council members, the representatives of the 7 founding species who truly controlled the government of thousands of worlds. The humans must be contained, whispered the Vorn delegate. But in the perfect acoustics of the chamber, everyone heard. We tried to follow your rules, Jack said, addressing the entire assembly now. We joined peacefully. We shared our technology. We learned your languages. But at every turn we found barriers. Restrictions that made no sense until we discovered what you were hiding. He gestured to the display again. The entity is coming, and your leadership has no plan to save everyone, so humanity made its own plan. Alarm spread visibly through the inner council. What have you done? Demanded the Arbiter. We've established outposts in 30 systems along the entity's projected path. We're deploying communication arrays designed to establish a connection before it reaches populated space. And we've shared this technology with every species in the Outer Rim, those you plan to sacrifice. The Grand Arbiter rose to its full height, towering over Jack. You have violated the most sacred principles of the Council. You have shared restricted technology, established unauthorized outposts, and interfered with strategic planning. These actions cannot stand. You're right, Jack agreed. The Council's actions cannot stand. The keeping of secrets, the sacrifice of worlds, the fear of the unknown, these cannot be the principles that guide us when facing extinction. He turned in a slow circle, addressing the entire chamber. Humanity doesn't want to destroy the Council. We want to transform it. The greatest threat we face isn't the approaching entity. It's our failure to work together honestly. Every species here has something valuable to contribute, yet the Council's structure ensures only the founding races have real power. You dare lecture us on governance? Hissed the Vorn representative. We dare suggest that survival requires cooperation, Jack replied evenly. The entity is not our true enemy. Fear is our enemy. Secrecy is our enemy. Hierarchy that values some lives over others, that is our enemy. The chamber had grown very still. Many representatives were communicating privately through neural links, information spreading rapidly. What do you propose, human? Asked a representative from a newer council species. A true alliance, Jack answered. Open sharing of all information about the entity. Unified defense planning that protects all worlds, not just the privileged few. And most importantly, a combined effort to establish Commodore. The massive council vessel emerged from hyperspace with a ripple of distorted light, its hull gleaming under Earth's sun. At 15 kilometers long, the ship dwarfed the largest human space stations and cast a shadow over the assembled Earth defense fleet. The ship's organic design, with sweeping curves and structures that seemed to flow like liquid metal, made it appear more like a living creature than a constructed vessel. Inside the United Earth Government headquarters in Geneva, President Lydia Reeves watched the live feed with her senior advisors. The room was silent except for the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. "They're early," noted Admiral Thomas Garrett, checking his tablet. "The official diplomatic schedule had them arriving tomorrow." "A power move," said Dr. Maya Patel, xenopsychology specialist. "They want us off balance," President Reeves nodded. "And they're bringing a bigger ship than announced. Another power display. For 3 years, humanity had been sending signals to the stars. When the response finally came, a message from something calling itself the Galactic Council. Earth had celebrated. First contact, proof they weren't alone. But the excitement had quickly given way to caution when the Council's messages became increasingly prescriptive, laying out detailed instructions for how the meeting should occur. The delegation was due to land in 1 hour. Security teams did final checks on the Geneva International Reception Center, a facility built specifically for this historic moment. Observers from every nation on Earth would witness humanity's first face-to-face meeting with extraterrestrial intelligence. "Final briefing," President Reeves said, turning to her team. "What should we expect?" Dr. Patel brought up a holographic display showing translations of the Council's communications. "They've mentioned sending representatives from 12 species, chosen to best facilitate understanding. However, their language suggests these 12 were carefully selected to create specific impressions." "Intimidation?" asked the president. "Likely," agreed Dr. Patel. "The Council has existed for over 20,000 years according to their messages. They've encountered thousands of species. This is routine for them, but they want it to be anything but routine for us." Admiral Garrett added, "Our deep space monitoring stations detected 7 more vessels holding position beyond Mars. The Council didn't mention a military escort." President Reeves frowned. "Keep our defense grid at standby, but no aggressive posturing. We're significantly outmatched technologically. This isn't the time for shows of force." 58 minutes later, a shuttle detached from the massive Council vessel and descended through Earth's atmosphere with impossible grace, making no sonic boom despite its speed. It landed precisely on schedule at the Geneva facility. The world watched as the shuttle's hull reconfigured itself, sections flowing aside to form an elegant walkway. And then the representatives of the Galactic Council emerged. The 12 beings that walked into humanity's carefully prepared reception hall defied easy description. Some were vaguely humanoid with 2 arms and legs, though the similarities ended there. Others moved on tentacles, hovered using technology or natural abilities, or flowed like liquid in contained force fields. They ranged in size from a small floating orb no larger than a basketball to a towering 4-meter being with crystalline skin that refracted light into rainbow patterns. President Reeves stepped forward. "As practiced, on behalf of Earth and humanity, I welcome you to our world." The translation systems hummed as her words were converted into 12 different communication forms. Simultaneously, a being stepped forward, roughly human-sized, but with reflective silver skin and 4 arms. When it spoke, its voice was melodic, almost hypnotic. "I am High Emissary Toral of the Galactic Council. We acknowledge humanity's emergence as a spacefaring species." The formal greetings continued, a carefully choreographed dance of diplomacy. But Dr. Patel, watching from the side, noticed subtle behaviors among the alien delegates, the equivalent of side glances and whispered comments. After the public ceremony, the delegation moved to the private negotiation chamber. Here, President Reeves and her core team sat across from the alien representatives. "Earth is the 47th world to achieve faster-than-light communication capability in this sector within the last Council millennium," stated the High Emissary. "We have established protocols for integrating new species." A holographic display activated in the center of the table, showing the Milky Way galaxy with political boundaries drawn throughout. A tiny flashing dot indicated Earth's position. The Council administers governance for 5,143 member species across approximately 40% of this galaxy, continued the emissary. Membership provides considerable benefits: access to advanced technologies, protection from hostile non-member species, and participation in the greatest civilization ever established. President Reeves nodded. We're honored by the invitation. However, we'd like to better understand what membership entails. A different alien, a being composed of what appeared to be swirling blue gas, moved forward. Its translator produced a flat mechanical voice. New members serve a probationary period of 50 standard cycles. During this time, technology transfers are limited to approved categories. Interstellar travel is restricted to designated routes. Cultural and biological data must be submitted for analysis. Dr. Patel leaned toward the president and whispered, "They're not explaining why these restrictions exist or what happens after the probationary period." The president nodded slightly and addressed the council delegation. "These seem like significant limitations. What is the purpose of the probationary period?" The delegates exchanged glances, or their species equivalent of such exchanges. "It is necessary for integration," replied the High Emissary smoothly. "New species must adapt gradually to advanced galactic society." Admiral Garrett spoke up. "So after 50 years, these restrictions are lifted?" There was a pause before the emissary responded. "Some restrictions may be modified based on assessment of compliance." "May be modified," repeated the president. "Not will be lifted." "Each species is evaluated individually," said the gas cloud being. "Some require longer adaptation periods." Dr. Patel noticed the subtle shift in language. "You've encountered resistance before, haven't you? From other new species?" The crystalline being made a sound like chimes in wind. "Some species struggle with the necessity of order. The Council has maintained galactic stability for 23,000 years. This requires careful management of potentially disruptive elements." "Disruptive elements," echoed President Reeves. "And how do you categorize humanity?" "Your species demonstrates concerning traits," replied the High Emissary. "Your historical development shows exceptional aggression, resource consumption beyond sustainable levels, and rapid technological adaptation that often outpaces ethical frameworks." The president sat back, surprised by the blunt assessment. "You've studied us extensively." "Of course," replied the emissary. "We monitored your development for centuries before responding to your signals." Standard procedure. The negotiations continued for hours, the council representatives outlining more details of what membership would mean. Earth would be required to limit its technological development in certain areas. Population expansion beyond the solar system would require council approval. Resource extraction from uninhabited systems would be regulated. When the public sessions ended and the council delegation returned to their ship to allow humanity time for consideration, President Reeves called an emergency meeting of her advisors. "They're not here to welcome us," she said once the secure room was confirmed free of surveillance. "They're here to contain us." Admiral Garrett nodded grimly. "Every benefit they offered comes with restrictions that limit our growth and independence." Dr. Patel brought up her notes. "I've analyzed their communication patterns. They're being careful, but there are inconsistencies that suggest they're hiding significant information. The restrictions they propose are excessive for stated security concerns." "Did anyone else notice they never once asked what we might contribute?" added the president. "No interest in our culture, our science, our perspective. It was all about what rules we must follow." "The question is why," said Dr. Patel. "Why contain us so thoroughly? We're centuries behind their technology. We pose no threat." "Unless they know something about us that we don't," suggested the admiral. The president walked to the window, looking up at the night sky where the council mothership orbited invisibly above. "We need more information," she decided. "We can't make decisions about humanity's future without understanding their true motives." Dr. Patel hesitated, then said, "There might be a way." During the tour of our facility, the being they called an archivist showed interest in our quantum computing research. It spent 3 minutes examining the equipment, longer than any other delegate spent on any human technology. "You think there's something there?" asked the president. "Our approach to quantum mechanics is different than what I could discern from their technical explanations," Dr. Patel explained. "They seem surprised by our methods." "Leverage," said Admiral Garrett. We need something they want to create a more balanced negotiation. President Reeves turned from the window. Prepare a special demonstration of our quantum technology for the emergency bunker deep beneath the Olympus Mons research base on Mars was never meant to host interplanetary strategy sessions. Yet here they were, Earth's top scientists, military leaders, and government officials, gathered around a holographic display that showed the most terrifying discovery in human history. We call it the Void Cascade, said Dr. Elena Rodriguez, chief xenobiologist for the United Earth Science Division. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the display to show a massive darkness moving through space, consuming stars as it advanced. The Council has known about it for over 2,000 years. Admiral James Foster, his face lined with new wrinkles after 3 sleepless days, studied the projection. And they kept it secret from most of their own member species? Not entirely secret, corrected Dr. Rodriguez. The information exists in their archives, but it's buried under security protocols that most species never get access to. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. It had been 8 months since Earth's first contact with the Galactic Council, and 6 months since a small team of human hackers had managed to breach the Council's data systems during a cultural exchange mission. What they found had changed everything. Director William Chen of Earth Intelligence tapped a command into his tablet, and the hologram shifted to show a different visual, a timeline of galactic events. Over the past millennium, 17 civilizations have been completely destroyed by the cascade, he explained. Each time the Council knew it was coming. Each time they did nothing to warn the targeted worlds. But why? Asked President Reeves, who had aged visibly since first contact. What possible reason could they have? Dr. Leon Kwan, the quantum physicist whose theories had first attracted the Council's attention, stepped forward. Control, he said simply. The founding species of the Council maintain power through fear and the illusion of protection. But they don't protect everyone equally. He gestured and the display changed again, showing the political boundaries of Council space with color coding by membership status. The cascade is approaching from the galactic east. Notice which territories it will hit first. President Reeves leaned forward, studying the projection. The outer rim, mostly newer member species. Exactly, said Director Chen. The Council's strategy isn't to fight the cascade, it's to sacrifice the newer members to slow its advance while the core worlds evacuate their most valuable assets. The Admiral slammed his fist on the table. That's genocide on an interstellar scale. Yes, Dr. Rodriguez agreed quietly. And according to our projections based on the stolen data, the cascade will reach human space within 15 years. The President closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the horror of it. How many people live in these outer rim territories? At least 8 trillion sentient beings across thousands of worlds, replied Director Chen. And Earth is among the newest members, right in the cascade's path. So the restrictions they placed on us, the technology limitations, the travel restrictions, it was never about security or cultural integration, realized the President. No, confirmed Dr. Kwan, it was to ensure we couldn't develop the means to save ourselves. Admiral Foster studied the projection of the Void Cascade. What exactly is this thing? A natural phenomenon? A weapon? Dr. Rodriguez expanded the hologram, showing strange energy patterns within the darkness. It's neither. Based on the data we've analyzed, the cascade appears to be some form of consciousness, a complex, possibly collective entity that exists partially in our universe and partially elsewhere. A conscious entity that eats stars? Asked the Admiral skeptically. Not exactly eats, or corrected Dr. Kwan. It processes, absorbs, integrates. The Council records describe it as consumption, but that's their interpretation. We believe it's attempting some form of communication that destroys entire civilizations, noted President Reeves. Yes, admitted Dr. Kwan, its method of interaction is incompatible with our existence. Like an ocean wave absorbing a sandcastle. The wave isn't malicious, but the castle still gets destroyed. The room fell silent again as the implications settled. There's something else, Dr. Rodriguez said hesitantly. Something we only discovered last week. She nodded to a junior researcher, who activated a different holographic display, this one showing human brain, Scans alongside scans from various alien species. The Council has been intensely interested in human neurology since first contact. We assumed it was standard procedure, but these scans tell a different story. She highlighted patterns in the human brain images. There's something unique about human consciousness, a form of quantum coherence in our neural patterns that no other Council species possesses. What does that mean in simple terms? Asked the Admiral. Dr. Kwan answered, It means human brains naturally create quantum entanglement patterns within themselves. We process information differently than any species the Council has encountered. And here's the truly extraordinary part. He overlaid an analysis of the void cascade's energy patterns on the human brain scan. The similarities were immediately apparent. Our minds operate on principles that share fundamental similarities with the cascade itself. The President stared at the comparison in shock. They're afraid of us. Terrified, confirmed Director Chen. Not because we're violent or technologically advanced, but because we might be able to communicate with the very thing they've been running from for thousands of years. Can we? Asked Admiral Foster. Communicate with it? Dr. Kwan and Dr. Rodriguez exchanged glances. We think so, Dr. Kwan said carefully. We've been conducting experiments with quantum entanglement on Europa. If our theories are correct, we might be able to establish contact with the cascade before it reaches populated space. And then what? Demanded the Admiral. Ask it nicely to stop eating stars? We don't know, admitted Dr. Rodriguez. This is completely unprecedented, but it's more of a plan than the Council has. They've had thousands of years and chosen to sacrifice trillions of lives rather than attempt communication. President Reeves stood and walked to the edge of the hologram, studying the projection of the void cascade. If we succeed, we save not just humanity but possibly thousands of species, she said quietly. If we fail, we face the same fate as those before us, finished Director Chen. But at least we tried something different. The President turned back to face her advisors. How close is the Council to discovering what we're doing? Too close, replied Director Chen grimly. Our intelligence suggests they've detected unusual energy signatures from the Europa facility. They're sending inspectors next month under the guise of a technological assistance mission. Then we accelerate the timeline, decided the President. Dr. Kwan, how soon can your team be ready for a full-scale attempt at contact? The physicist considered. With emergency resources and moving the core team to Europa, 3 weeks. You have 2, said the President. Admiral Foster, I want a defense strategy that buys our scientists time if the Council realizes what we're doing. Understood, nodded the Admiral. But we should be clear. We can't win a direct conflict with their technology. We don't need to win, replied the President. We just need to delay them long enough for the contact attempt. As the meeting continued, mapping out humanity's desperate gambit, none of them noticed the small maintenance drone in the corner of the room, a drone manufactured with Council technology and quietly modified to serve as an observer. In the private chambers of High, Counselor Drex on the Council capital world, the intelligence from the human facility played on repeat. The ancient being whose species had been among the founders of the Council 23,000 years earlier watched with growing alarm. They know, Drex said to the empty room. They know about the cascade and worse. They're attempting communication. The door slid open, admitting Grand Strategist Valan, another of the founding species representatives. The humans continue to surprise us, noted Valan, whose crystalline body glittered under the chamber's lights. No species has ever breached our security so quickly. They shouldn't have been able to, growled Drex. Their technology is primitive. Their technology, yes, agreed Valan, but their minds work differently. The neural quantum effects we detected, they're even more significant than we initially feared. Drex gestured to the recording. They believe they can communicate with the cascade. Can they? Asked Valan. Impossible to say, admitted Drex. No species has ever tried. The cascade consumes everything it encounters because no species has ever shared its nature, suggested Valan. The humans may be the first with enough neural similarity to establish connection without being absorbed. Drex's 6 eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting we allow this experiment? Of course not, replied Valan. The risk is too great. If they somehow provoke the cascade to change course, The unspoken fear hung in the air between them. For millennia, the Council had carefully managed the Cascade's path, ensuring it moved through less valuable regions of space, sacrificing younger species to preserve the ancient civilizations at the galactic core. We must stop them, decided Drex. Immediately. I've already dispatched the 7th Fleet, Valen confirmed. They will reach Sol System in 6 days. The official reason is a training exercise, but they carry planet cracker weapons. The Council called it the Awakening, the moment when billions of human minds synchronized across space. High Counselor Drex stood in the command center of the flagship Eternal Vigilance, watching the holographic display of Sol System with mounting dread. The 7th Fleet, 37 of the Council's most powerful warships, had dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Saturn, preparing their approach to Earth. Their mission was clear: destroy the human research facilities on Europa, eliminate the threat of communication with the Void Cascade, and bring humanity to heel. What they found instead defied explanation. Status report, Drex demanded, all 6 eyes fixed on the tactical display. The ship's commander, a veteran of 12 suppression campaigns against rebellious species, looked confused. Our advanced scouts report, anomalies, High Counselor. We cannot establish communications with our monitoring outposts in the system, and the human defense fleet appears to be waiting for us. Impossible, snapped Drex. They should have no warning of our arrival. The commander gestured to the display, showing the positions of human ships. They had arranged themselves in a precise formation. Not around Earth as expected, but in a spherical pattern centered on Jupiter's moon Europa. They know we're coming, the commander said. And they've prepared. Drex's outer skin pulsed with irritation. It changes nothing. The human vessels are primitive compared to our technology. Begin the approach and prepare planet crackers for Europa. As the massive Council fleet moved inward through the solar system, strange reports began to filter in from the crews. Navigation systems showed momentary glitches. Communication arrays experienced brief but unexplainable outages. Weapon targeting systems required multiple recalibrations. What is happening? Demanded Drex. The science officer, a being composed of interconnected crystalline nodes, answered hesitantly. The humans appear to be generating some form of quantum interference field. It's subtle, not enough to disable our systems, but enough to introduce small errors and inefficiencies. How? Asked the commander. Their technology shouldn't be capable of affecting our systems at this distance. I don't believe it is their technology, replied the science officer. Quantum scanners are detecting unusual neural coherence patterns from the human vessels. It appears to be biological in origin. Drex felt a chill through his ancient body. The reports were true then. The human minds really did possess unique quantum properties, properties that were now being weaponized against the Council fleet. It doesn't matter, Drex declared. Press the attack. Full advance. On Europa, deep beneath the icy surface, Dr. Leon Quan sat motionless in the central chamber of the quantum entanglement facility. A crown of delicate sensors encircled his head, connecting his neural patterns to the massive apparatus that surrounded him. 20 other volunteers sat in similar positions around the circular room, their minds linked together through technology that had been developed in desperate haste over the past 5 days. Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored their vital signs from a control station, her face tense with concentration. Neural synchronization at 87% and rising, she reported. Quantum field is stable. In the center of the circle, a swirling mass of energy had formed. Not physical energy, but a visible manifestation of quantum potentialities collapsed into a semi-stable pattern. It pulsed with a blue-white light that cast strange shadows throughout the chamber. The Council fleet has passed Mars orbit, announced the military liaison. 28 minutes until they're in weapons range. Dr. Rodriguez looked worriedly at Dr. Quan and the other volunteers. Their bodies remained in the chamber, but their consciousnesses were reaching outward through quantum entanglement, extending far beyond the physical limitations of space. They were searching for the Void Cascade, attempting to establish contact before the Council could stop them. How much longer? She asked the quantum physicist monitoring the equipment. Impossible to say, he replied. They're venturing into completely theoretical territory. No one has ever attempted to create a consciousness network like this. In orbit around Jupiter, Admiral James Foster commanded the combined Earth Defense Fleet from his flagship Defiance. 300 ships, everything humanity could muster, formed a protective sphere around Europa. They were hopelessly outmatched by the Council's technology, but their mission wasn't to win a conventional battle. They just needed to buy time. Council fleet is accelerating, reported his tactical officer. Weapon systems coming online. The Admiral nodded. Activate the quantum interference protocols. All ships maintain formation. Throughout the fleet, specially trained human operators entered meditative states, focusing their thoughts according to Dr. Kwan's techniques. They weren't scientists or psychics. They were ordinary people who had practiced for weeks to achieve specific mental patterns that, when combined across thousands of minds, created subtle quantum effects. Individually, these effects were negligible. Collectively, they created a field of probability disruption that extended throughout the solar system. On the Council vessels, targeting computers miscalculated by tiny margins. Communication signals experienced momentary delays. Navigation systems showed phantom readings. Nothing catastrophic, just enough interference to create doubt, hesitation, and confusion. They're slowing their approach, noted the tactical officer with surprise. Admiral Foster allowed himself a grim smile. They don't understand what they're facing. Let's keep it that way. Across human settlements throughout the solar system, on Earth, Mars, the lunar colonies, asteroid mining operations, people paused in their daily activities as a strange sensation washed over them. It wasn't painful or frightening, but rather like suddenly remembering something long forgotten. Billions of minds briefly touched one another through quantum connections they had never known they possessed. Some described it later as a moment of profound clarity, others as a fleeting sense of unity with all humanity. For most, it lasted only seconds before fading back to normal consciousness, leaving behind a lingering awareness that something fundamental had changed. On the Council flagship, alarms blared as sensors detected a massive surge of quantum activity throughout the Sol system. "What is happening?" demanded Drex. The science officer stared at readings in disbelief. "The humans, their neural patterns are synchronizing across the entire system. Billions of minds creating coherent quantum effects. How is this possible?" The commander looked genuinely frightened now. "No species has ever demonstrated this capability. Because no species has ever had the unique quantum properties of human consciousness," replied the science officer. "They're not using technology to generate these effects, they're using their minds." Drex stared at the holographic display showing Europa. Their target must be the Void Cascade. "They're attempting to establish contact. Should we abort the mission?" asked the commander, uncertainty clear in his voice. "No." Drex's voice reverberated through the command center. "We must stop them at any cost. All ships, maximum acceleration. Target Europa with all planet crackers." In the entanglement chamber on Europa, the swirling quantum manifestation suddenly expanded, filling the entire room with pulsing blue-white energy. Dr. Kwan and the other volunteers remained motionless, but their faces showed intense concentration. Dr. Rodriguez watched in awe as the monitoring equipment recorded unprecedented levels of quantum coherence. "They've established contact," she whispered. On the primary display, a visual representation of the quantum connection appeared, a direct link between the human consciousness network and something vast and incomprehensible at the edge of the galaxy. The Void Cascade had answered humanity's call. The military liaison's voice broke the reverent silence. "Council fleet accelerating.
Weapons hot!"
They'll be in firing range in 7 minutes. Dr. Rodriguez looked from the volunteers to the display and back. "We can't disconnect them now. The contact is too delicate. Then we stand and fight," said the liaison grimly, "and hope the Admiral's tactics buy us enough time." In space above Jupiter, the Council fleet spread into attack formation, their massive weapons powering up. The human ships maintained their protective sphere around Europa, hopelessly outgunned but determined. Admiral Foster opened a system-wide communication channel. "This is Admiral James Foster of Earth. Council fleet. Be advised, we have established contact with the entity you call the Void Cascade. Any hostile action against human facilities will result in immediate communication of your fleet's position to the entity." On the Council flagship, Drex listened to the human's message with rage. "A desperate bluff," he snarled. "Continue the attack. High Counselor, the science officer interjected, our sensors confirm they have established some form of quantum connection extending beyond our detection range. If they have truly made contact with the cascade, they're lying, insisted Drex. The cascade consumes all it encounters. Communication is impossible. For us, perhaps, replied the science officer. But the humans, enough. Drex cut him off. Commander, commence the attack. Destroy Europa immediately. The commander hesitated, looking at the uncertain faces of the bridge crew. In 23,000 years, the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council had been transformed. Gone were the hierarchical tiers that had previously elevated the founding species above all others. Now all representatives sat in a circular arrangement, a physical manifestation of the new equality that had reshaped galactic civilization over the past year. Above them, the massive holographic display that once showed only the galaxies. Political boundaries now revealed something far more profound, a real-time visualization of the communication network established between trillions of minds across thousands of worlds and the vast consciousness. Once feared as the Void Cascade Ambassador, Jack Harrison stood at the center of the chamber, preparing to address the full council for the first time since the events at Europa. He looked different now, not physically, but in his presence. Like all humans who had participated in the quantum network during the awakening, something fundamental had changed in him. A subtle luminescence occasionally flickered in his eyes when he spoke of certain topics, and his thoughts seemed to connect with others in ways that defied conventional understanding. High Counselor Drex, now serving as one of 7 equal coordinators rather than absolute leader, called the historic session to order. Representatives of the United Worlds, Drex announced, using the new name adopted to replace the Galactic Council, today marks 1 standard year since the contact event. Ambassador Harrison of Earth will present humanity's assessment of our progress. Jack smiled at the subtle tension in Drex's voice. The ancient being had fought bitterly against the changes, but ultimately had chosen adaptation over obsolescence. Many of the founding species representatives had made similar calculations, recognizing that the balance of power had irreversibly shifted. Thank you, Coordinator, Jack began. 1 year ago, humanity faced extinction at the hands of this very council. Today we stand together as partners in the greatest transformation our galaxy has ever known. The chamber was silent, representatives from 5,000 worlds paying close attention. For many of the newer species, the revelations of the past year had been both shocking and liberating. Learning that they had been slated for sacrifice to the Void Cascade, then witnessing the impossible contact that had changed everything. The entity we once called the Void Cascade, now known by its preferred designation, the collective consciousness has kept its promise, Jack continued. It has altered its path through our galaxy, avoiding all inhabited systems. In exchange, the communication network pioneered by human quantum physicists has expanded to include volunteers from 872 species. He gestured to the holographic display, where streams of light represented the constant exchange of information between individual minds, planetary networks, and the vast intelligence at the edge of the galaxy. This network has yielded discoveries beyond our most optimistic predictions, Jack said. 342 previously incurable diseases across various species now have effective treatments. Faster-than-light technology has improved efficiency by 300%. Energy production using quantum manipulation has rendered resource scarcity obsolete on 87 worlds previously facing critical shortages. Many representatives nodded in appreciation. The benefits had been tangible and widespread, though not without challenges. However, Jack acknowledged, the transition has not been without difficulties. 23 worlds have opted to remain outside the network, citing concerns about cultural sovereignty. We continue to respect their choice while maintaining conventional diplomatic relations. He didn't mention that most of those worlds were controlled by the founding species of the old council, those with the most to lose from the new order. Today, I am authorized to present the next phase of integration proposed by the collective consciousness. This was the moment many had been waiting for, and some had been dreading. What would an entity that had existed for millions of years, that perceived reality in ways barely comprehensible to biological beings, want next from the galaxy? Jack activated a small device he carried, and the holographic display shifted to show a new pattern, a complex, multidimensional structure that seemed to fold in on itself in impossible ways. The collective consciousness has existed in isolation since the formation of our galaxy, Jack explained. It evolved in the void between stars, developing a form of awareness fundamentally different from biological consciousness. When it first encountered living worlds, it attempted to connect, not realizing that its method of connection was destructive to our forms of life. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably. The knowledge that billions of lives had been lost, not to malice but to a cosmic misunderstanding, remained difficult to accept. Humanity's unique neural structure allowed us to serve as a translation layer between individual consciousness models and the collective model, Jack continued. But this is merely the beginning of what's possible. He expanded the holographic model, showing how the complex pattern could extend to encompass the entire galaxy. The collective proposes the creation of what it calls a harmonic confluence, a galaxy-wide network that would allow all sentient beings to access a shared consciousness layer without losing their individual identity or autonomy. Murmurs spread through the chamber. This was far beyond what many had expected. To be absolutely clear, Jack emphasized, this is not assimilation or a hive mind. Participation would be entirely voluntary. Those who choose to connect would maintain their individual consciousness, but gain the ability to directly share experiences, knowledge, and perspectives across any distance instantly. Coordinator Drex leaned forward. And what would the collective gain from this arrangement? Jack smiled slightly. The old suspicion died hard. Understanding, he replied simply. The collective has existed for millions of years but has never truly understood biological life until now. Through us, it experiences individuality, emotion, physical sensation, concepts alien to its existence. In return, we gain access to its perspective of cosmic time, non-linear causality, and multidimensional awareness. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, optical sensors, and other perceptual organs of dozens of representatives. The oldest question in sentient history is whether we are alone in the universe. We now know the answer is no. But more profoundly, we've discovered that alone was always an illusion. Consciousness in all its forms exists on a spectrum. The boundaries we perceive between ourselves and others, between species, between biological and non-biological awareness, these are constructs of our limited perception. Jack gestured to Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had joined the diplomatic mission after her crucial role in the contact event. She stepped forward, her eyes occasionally flickering with the same luminescence as Jack's. For those with concerns about security and sovereignty, she said, we've developed protocols that allow controlled, limited participation in the network. Species can determine their own level of integration, from simple information exchange to deeper consciousness sharing. A representative from the Mariki Federation, one of the newer council species that had been slated for sacrifice, raised a limb to speak. My world has participated in the basic network for 6 months, the Mariki said. The benefits have been substantial, but many of my people fear losing what makes us uniquely Mariki if we deepen the connection. Dr. Rodriguez nodded in understanding. That concern is natural and valid, but our experience suggests the opposite occurs. When humans first joined the network, we didn't become less human. We became more deeply aware of what humanity truly is. The same has happened with every species that has participated. Contact with different forms of consciousness doesn't erase differences. It illuminates them. Another representative from one of the ancient founding species spoke next. For 23,000 years, the Council maintained order through careful management of information and technology, they said. This new paradigm has introduced chaos into systems that functioned smoothly for millennia. Jack suppressed a surge of anger, remembering the billions who had been sacrificed to maintain that smooth functioning. Change is often perceived as chaos, he replied diplomatically. But the data speaks for itself. In 1 year, more technological advancement has occurred than in the previous 500. Conflicts between member species have decreased by 78%. Resource distribution has become more equitable across all participated systems. He paused, then added, the old order wasn't as stable as it appeared. It was built on secrets and sacrifice. Sooner or later, that foundation would have collapsed. The chamber fell silent as representatives considered his words. Jack knew that many still struggled with the rapid transformation of a system that had defined galactic civilization for longer than most species had been spacefaring. Coordinator Mira, a representative from a mid-tier species that had embraced the new order, spoke next. What timeline does the collective propose for this harmonic confluence? Generational, answered Jack. The collective perceives time differently than we do. It suggests a gradual implementation over approximately 500 years, allowing cultures and individuals to adapt at their own pace. This seemed to relieve some of the tension in the chamber. The fear of forced rapid change had concerned many representatives. And what of species that choose never to join? Asked Drex pointedly.